Newzroom Africa's contributing politics editor, Vuyo Mvoko, joining me in studio tonight to talk us through what is going to probably be a very, very historic moment for our country indeed. Vuyo, we know that the last time that South Africa had a government of national unity was in 1994. Perhaps should we park for a moment those that are saying this is not a GNU as we know it, because it does appear that the Democratic Alliance and the ANC are somewhat the parties involved here. So there are those who hold a strong view that this is a coalition more than a GNU. But President Ramaphosa has it that it is a GNU. How important a moment is this for him? Do you think that we have paid adequate attention to what he has had to say here? We heard him for the first time towards the end of the week that we are ending, coming out in that letter, and he didn't have very nice things to say about the DA.
Certainly not. I mean, look, I personally think he was sort of kind, very diplomatic towards John Steenhuisen, but also I think the ANC, or he in particular, needed to sort of deal with Steenhuisen in such a way that he is able to be seen to be alienating Helen Zille, who is the force behind the DA and its very, shall we say, aggressive stance. So he needed to sort of mollycoddle John Steenhuisen, rub his ego a bit, but at the same time achieve what he wanted to do, which is what, in essence, I mean, is what Helen Zille and the other people wanted, which was more. And my understanding is that he has been able to keep it. Where he wanted to keep them and make the offer that he wanted to make, and not give in to the demand that John Steenhuisen tried to make, or shall we say, Helen Zille and co. Tried to make via John Steenhuisen.
Well, we are reminded in the Sunday Times today, Vuyo, that President Ramaphosa was there in the CODESA negotiations, and he was also there, by the way, during the peace negotiations in Ireland. So he's a skilled negotiator. Do you think that he has displayed much of that in this haggling between themselves and the DA? Or do you think that he really didn't want to come out as a strong force, much like what Helen Zille has done for the DA?
Look, he's a charmer. There's no doubt about that. And that has, in fact, worked against him over the years, certainly when he became president and got to be the guy in charge. Because on the back of his charm, then people pinned, you know, their hopes on him, that this is the guy who's going to bring. Go back to when it started. People like Gwede saying, here's a guy who's not going to need money, you know, so he's not going to be corrupt. Indeed. You know, and here's a person who many people felt would take one for the nation, you know, so to speak, because he had nothing to lose. He's got money to take care of you know, the next generations of Ramaphosas. So he is best placed, well poised, to actually do the right thing and really go in there and make the huge difference that South Africa needs right now. But alas, that hasn't happened. But be that as it may, I think he has worked his charm. I think he has made sure, or made it a point, that the DA doesn't get, doesn't go astray. In other words, dump this whole arrangement. Of course, there's been a lot of speculation as to who actually wants this arrangement more than anyone else, and the powerful people that he is enemies, shall we say, or detractors keep on saying are actually behind him, the markets, the money people, or the Stellenbosch mafia, as some have chosen to label them. But whatever and whoever may have been behind it, I think he is going to deliver on that mandate and seem to be the guy who brought everyone to the table, including, by the way, which we shouldn't, I think, undermine or estimate, the 8 other parties that have pledged their support or to the government of national unity, as all of them prefer to call it.
Should we assume, therefore, that he has gotten over the hurdle within his own party, because I'm sure there has been a lot of appeasement that he has had to do inside the ANC, the alliance partners as well, that were very vocal. Has he gotten over that hurdle, or you think that that is work in progress?
He has, and he hasn't. He has for now, right? But not without a fight. There were people, or there are, I should say, people within the National Executive Committee of the ANC, which is the highest decision-making body, who still believe that it was a big mistake to go with the Democratic Alliance. Of course, the jury, is out. We're going to see what's going to happen next once, the tires start hitting the road, in a manner of speaking, as to whether this arrangement will actually work. Yeah. But no one is under any illusion about the fact that it's not going to be easy. These are people who come from very different background, whose worldview is at times diametrically, you have diametrically opposed people or parties here. But for now, I think he has managed to contain the crowd within the leadership of core of the ANC, who didn't want to go with the ANC. But I think a lot is going to depend on how they manage, things from here, because it's sort of, conceivably you can actually. It's just that, certainly from what we know, they haven't gotten to the point of saying, this is the agenda we're going to pursue together, and ring fence, so to speak, certain areas, and say, we're going to, in the next 5 years, these are the areas we're going to tackle, and this is how, and this is who is going to play what role. They haven't gotten there yet. Yeah. Because the conversations have been more around who gets what in the executive, without going to the hows and the whens. And I think that is where the conversation is going to move to next. And I think a lot of work is going to be done by outsiders. There's a view, for example, that you need to have people who are going to be able to, who are not so involved, but who are invested in what needs to happen next, to a point where they will be able to act as a sort of council of sorts, behind the scenes, but being able to, but who wield enough power and influence over everybody, to a point where they will be able to sort of make sure that, things don't go haywire. Yeah.
Indeed, and there are some suggestions, at least from the academics, who are saying that the national dialogue is part and parcel of that vehicle of trying to, if you want to use the term, mollycoddle this government of national unity, at least for the next 5 years, so that it doesn't collapse. However, I want to talk about, cynically, what some people say is the ANC that sits outside of the ANC. Who am I talking about? EFF, the MK. The EFF making a last-ditch effort, it is reported, this weekend, with the ANC holding meetings on Friday and them again stressing that you cannot go into a national a government of national unity with the DA and the Freedom Front Plus. If you ditch them, we are in as the EFF. Tonight, a decision has come. Do you think that they have managed to convince the ANC, not only the man who's going to be announcing this decision, or you think that that ship has sailed for the EFF at least, who have put forward now a last-ditch effort to say, we're available?
I think it has. I think it has because the key demand or precondition of the EFF is difficult to meet for a Cyril Ramaphosa, for all the reasons I stated earlier, which is that we're keen to come on board, provided you ditch these other two partners, and that is not going to happen. Certainly, I mean, not now, unless, of course, the DA had pulled out, as some people suggested only a few days ago after that letter, that if they had insisted on that demand that John Steenhuisen made to the president as a precondition to an agreement, then there was the option of looking in the direction of the EFF and the MK party, which is not on the table now. As much as he would ideally, from what I've been able to pick up, the president would have, or those in power in the ANC would have wanted to be as inclusive as possible. But of course, there was the potential danger of having your MK party and the EFF being, or taking the posture of being more radical than everyone else, which then would have meant or would have had implications for a relationship with the Democratic Alliance. So, as things stand, my understanding is that the president is, I mean, the arrangement is without these other two
EFF and
extensions of the ANC, if you want to call it.
Okay, all right. Let's now then move the conversation to the Democratic Alliance. And interestingly, you use the term "not without a fight." By the way, this happens to be the title of the memoir of Helen Zille, "Not Without a Fight." She's certainly made a very, very strong showing here by being almost the bulldog of the Democratic Alliance publicly, whilst John Steenhuisen, behind the scenes, talks to President Ramaphosa. Let's talk about the portfolios that, at least what is being reported publicly now, they seem to have managed to secure. Home Affairs, that portfolio, it has been under the ANC. And who, in your view, do you think that would be the suitable candidate from the benches of the Democratic Alliance to occupy that position as Minister of Home Affairs? I know it's a very difficult one. I promise not to launch the same question with the other, but it just seems to me, Home Affairs, Public Works and Infrastructure, Agriculture, basic education, these are so important for this country. But let's kick off with Home Affairs. Who do you think the DA might put forward there as a suitable candidate for that portfolio?
You know, the difficulty with the Democratic Alliance is that even though they've had these shadow ministers, you know, as they call them, these are people who only carried, you know, that title, but without really having done much, you know, to by way of ideas, to put. Of course, it's not like the ANC has done wonderfully, you know, either. I mean, you know, you have to like someone like Dr. Motsoaledi, very amenable person, not as haughty as many people, you know, in the ANC's national executive are. Very nice guy, but has he been as effective as he could have been? Yes, he has been present, right? But it's been a difficult portfolio to manage. Cast your mind back to a Mangosuthu Buthelezi who occupied, that position as well. Did he really make it? So it's as much as it is important, it's been sort of it's not been as contentious a position as it perhaps ought to have been, you know, given its importance and role. And that is why someone like Gayton McKenzie, you know, would go out publicly and say, "Give it to me, and I'll show you," how things, should be done. But to try and answer your question, very vague, of course. Where it could go to anyone, and I don't think anything really is going to be. It's not going to move mountains, you know.
Sure.
Hence, the ANC is even prepared to give it to someone else. There's a lot at stake, but at the same time, it's not about that person driving it. But if you were to go to education, for example, look at NG Motshekga. People have been complaining about her ineffectiveness in that position, but whether she's even suitable, for that one. But she hung on to it. And you would hear someone like the ANC chairperson, Gweda Mantashe, saying, no, she's actually doing a marvelous job. It's just that she doesn't talk a lot about it, you know? And that's why people have a view that, she is not performing in that job. But if she was to trumpet, if she was to talk about her successes, you would actually understand. But of course.
Agriculture is now the latest portfolio that the Democratic Alliance appears to have been offered. But here's the kicker, without the land reform element, because this portfolio, as we know it, it's agriculture and land reform. What do you think the rationale is there to separate it? You give the agriculture part to the DA, and the land reform element will, we assume, be merged into another portfolio. Why that move?
Because you have to appease the people behind agriculture, who are fairly conservative, and who would want to identify with the person who gets to be in charge of agriculture. You know the profile of the Democratic Alliance. Look at the executive of the Western Cape. You know, look at the people who occupy senior positions within the Democratic Alliance. They are not ashamed of, showing, who they are and who is in charge. To the Democratic Alliance, this doesn't matter. All right? They are a party for all South Africans, but you know who is in charge. You look at who is who makes up in the party's leadership core. So it's something that, and remember when the discussions were happening, the offer to the Democratic Alliance was of positions. As to who then gets to occupy those positions, the ANC didn't have to discuss that. It's left to them, and the Democratic Alliance will give, or has given, President Ramaphosa the people that they deem fit to occupy those positions. And you will see when the announcement is made as to who they would have chosen to represent them there.
All right. Portfolio. Perhaps let's wrap it up then, Vuyo, and talk about why, in the first place, we saw the DA do what it did which was to come out very brazenly and say, we want 11 cabinet positions, and they named them. Was that a negotiating tactic so that when they are negotiated down, it doesn't come down to that 3 that we heard the ANC had offered the DA? Was this a tactic?
All of us have been in negotiations of one kind or the other. Right? When you joined Newzroom Afrika, you had to sit down with somebody and make your demands and try to provide a rationale, you know, for making those demands. But did you get what you wanted?
Maybe, maybe not.
Right? But everyone does that. I mean, it's the nature of negotiations. Yes, everyone has been talking about how irrational and how arrogant, Helen Zille Co. have been. So, but it's in the nature of negotiations. Only yesterday we were talking about Eskom, asking for huge tariff increases, that's what they're going to ask for, from NASA. But from experience that they always, get far less, than what they would have wanted. So it's in the nature of negotiations to go for the best scenario. Yeah. Of course, I mean, out of those conversations, then you get to settle for less. And I think that's what the strategy was.
Vuyo, let's pause it there for the moment, and we're going to have these discussions continue all the way up until 9 o'clock when the president does stand up to the podium. And so we're going to bring you, though, other news when we return.